Another month passes, another big slate of tier changes. What's poppin', people? Today I'm going to talk to you about the August tier shifts on Smogon. And I'm just going to start this video off real quick by letting y'all gaze at RU's shifts. That's all I want to... I'm not going to comment on them right now. Just observe. Anyhow, before we get into it, of course, a reminder. If you have been enjoying the content lately, do subscribe if you're not already subscribed, man. It takes like 5 seconds to go down there and click the button. Leave a like, comment, join as a member, whatever you can to support, I appreciate it. Now, as per usual, I'm going to first talk about Pokemon that leave NU for RU. And wonderfully for us, in our last shift, before we get a shift comparable to what RU just had, we actually don't have anything leaving NU. We have a couple mons going from NU BL to RU, but of course that's not impacting us. These had no chance of being unbanned until September at the earliest anyway, so not at all really something I care about, but I'll, make notes. Again, Frostmoth, why we banned it. Quiver Dance, very, very OP. Nothing could really stop it, and the few things that could try and stop it generally were just very, very easy to cheese by with terastallization. Hoopa! It had like 5 more billion different sets, and it hit like 27 freight trains going at Mach 10 speed. And then Torn, kind of similar, where there were a decent amount of different sets you could run. You could bring up questions about how effective were some of those physical sets compared to just spamming out strong hurricanes, but they existed and they did change your counterplay because, yeah, I mean, you gotta take into account durability, you gotta take into account, too, a mon that can progressively get much stronger. And I mean, acrobatics, it also hits like 27 freight trains, so hey, it was still a really powerful move that was hard to deal with. Torn's super duper fast as well, so when you're talking about trying to revenge kill it, it was not exactly easy to do so without something like, say, Jolteon or Triskov Rotom. And yeah, let's get to the fun things. Pokemon that drop down to NU, let's go! We're starting off with some... Let's not start off with trash. Let's start off with maybe treasure. We got maybe treasure, then we got absolute trash, and we got treasure. I mean, you're talking. This is a huge shift even for our standards, despite us not getting a ton of Pokemon. 3 technically, but 2 looking viable rapid spinners. Something NU has been lacking desperately ever since we got this tier. Normal Avalugg is not the most appealing Pokemon, but I think something worth pointing to is where Avalugg was generally rated back in Sword and Shield before we had all of the DLC shifts. It was at about the mid-B range, and that was because, it was okay on stall, but it even fit on balances, because back then, you had a ton of Sylvallies that you wanted to check with it. And because Avalugg was simply so bulky, none of them could really reliably break past you. And you even had a couple of physical wall breakers too, like Golurk and Decidueye at the time, where Avalugg was also really consistent at just switching into them and shutting them down. It's going to play out the same way this gen. Now, something worth considering is a lot of our offensive Pokemon right now do feel like they're specially based. You think about like Oricorio, Mesprit, Jolteon, Calm Mind, Dunsparce, Rotom. You could even have like Nasty Plot Toxicroak thrown in on there. But we still do have physical attackers, of course, like H-Sneasel, SD Croak, Coildadun, and, I mean, I'm trying to think of others right now, but when I'm just going through my head, it's a little hard. Oh, literally any Coilmon, I could say. And Avalugg is going to keep up with those very well. Even the ones that it's weak against, having the ability to terastallize into, maybe like a ground type, for example, is quite good. And having Iron Defense Body Press means that certain setup sweepers aren't really going to be able to just break by you. Because again, you can terastallize, but also you can set up so you outpace the boosts of Pokemon like Dunsparce and Electros. And you're able to then just start beating them down, and if they don't have their own Terra available, they might just lose to you 1v1. And I said Terra Grounds, Terra Fairy probably would be what that mon runs, but you get the idea. Just it's able to get rid of a normally pretty terrible defensive typing and get a much better one. And we've mentioned before with a mon like Jolteon, being a little reliant on Terra isn't the worst, so long as you're still functional before your Terra. And I think Avalugg is definitely plenty functional. Just like how Cryogonal. I feel Cryogonal is going to be less reliant on Terra, partly because of its speed. And I would say Ice especially is a bit better defensively, because you think about like what kinds of attacks Cryogonal could take. Attacks from a Jolteon. It could definitely take some of those if it needs. Or like a Rotom, switch into the Shadow Ball, just don't get tricked. You know something you could do. Calm Mind to Dunsparce. You could easily switch in and haze that. You're not worried about Boom Burst. I mean, seeing some of the Moo mods we got, Zoroark, you could switch into Dark Pulse if you have to from specs. You're gonna be able to take a hit. So it works a little bit better for Cryogonal pre-Terra, but even post, you still have Steel you could make pretty good use of, giving you resistances to some sort of attack, like Appleton's Draco Meteor. And then if you really need it too, I mean, you could run like Fairy. And that could help against some of the physical wall breakers in the format, like Hazel and Croak, if you're just trying to take the CC. Of course, they could gunk you, but you live and you learn. I would also say that something worth keeping attention on is Cryogonal versus Articuno going forward. They're very, very similar Pokemon in terms of function, being pretty fast naturally, especially defensive ice types, that have longevity. The difference we will see, because these mons are just about the exact same in terms of what they can do. The big difference will be that Articuno is a pivot with U-turn, whereas Cryogonal is a spinner. Both can haze, so it's not like that's what you're giving up. I guess Articuno has a bit better of an ability, because obviously Cryogonal does a lot of the same defensively since it's still got Levitate, so you're immune to the ground moves. You kind of force Sandaconda also to want to run Stone Edge. But Articuno gets to have that naturally and enough pressure, which is kind of cool. And of course, Articuno has a little more versatility, because it can run offensive sets. You know, having double stab is very, very useful. But I think, honestly, the niche of being able to spin is going to be quite huge. It's just going to be a matter of figuring out what Cryogonal's best spiker partner is. And I think you'll see a lot of that for this month of August. And so we talked about potential treasure, and we talked about definite treasure. Let's talk about some trash. Hisuian Avalugg. That is not a Pokemon. That is not a Pokemon at all. What am I supposed to do with Ice Rock? That ain't... no! No! It's not even like the worst offensive combo ever. Because there is some stuff that Rock complements Ice on. Like you get it Fire types, for example, with your Rock moves. You get it Ground types with your Ice moves. There's something there. Ice at least hits fighting types neutrally. The problem is, this mod is slow as balls. This mod has a terrible typing. So, what do you want it to do? It's, I think, just outclassed by normal Avalugg, because Hisuian has just got such a worse defensive typing without using your Terra. So we talked about how it's fine to rely on Terra if you're still pretty good without it. It makes it not as, like, detrimental to be called Terra-reliant. So again, Jolteon. Yes, it's Terra-reliant, but it's not like it's a terrible mon if you can't use your Terra. You still got a very, very solid option. And I think Avalugg will at least be competent without its Terra. I'm not convinced Hisuian will, at least not first impressions, because Ice Rock is just weak to so many common types. You got off the top of the dome, you got, like, fighting, you got ground. I mean, really, just those alone. Even water, though, is still pretty present. Grass, you're actually weak to as well. And like I had mentioned, because it's so slow, it's not like you outspeed these mods before they can hit you with these attacks. No. You're still getting shamoned by them. So I don't think this mod's gonna have much of a niche if I'm correct that normal Avalugg is just superior. I guess we'll see. It is still a spinner, so I'm pretty content that we have it around, but I would say, you know, don't get too excited about Hisuian Avalugg. And now we got... I'll talk about the other new Pokemon here. We got the offensive drops. Floatzel and Zoroark are returning, so I mentioned Samurott. I think Samurott could be pretty broken. Now, this is just me, you know, spitballing a guess before anything actually happens, so don't take too much into that. But Samurott, in previous gens, has had more Pokemon to hold back physical sets. You think about in Gen 6 Inu, you've got like Pelipper, you got Vileplume. Those are two really good deterrents to SD Samurott. And even in Gen 7 Inu, I mean, you still have something like Vaporeon, which can persistently give it hell. Yes, you've got Megahorn, you even have like potential +2 Savage Spinout, but you gotta dedicate your Z move to trying to break past that. Double switches could always come into that. Vaporeon isn't in the tier anymore, so you don't have that. You don't have, like, Heliolisk. to mean that +2 Aqua Jet can be spammed forever. You got Croak at least still, but, you know, it's not Heliolisk. It's a different Pokemon. I think offensive counterplay is pretty limited, but maybe still enough. And you even have some Pokemon like Lurantis that can force some dirty 50-50s with Terra. Samurott, of course, has to be cautious that Lurantis doesn't turn into an electric type as you Mega Horn, or I guess a fire type might be a little more apt there. Or, you know, if you want to predict a Terra, well, what if they stay as a grass type and you just get Leaf Stormed? And it's same with like something like Appleton, for example, where, okay, you Mega Horn it if it doesn't Terra, but okay, what if it does and it's a Steel now? You better have Liquidated. Croak will definitely get a good amount of extra use now, I would figure. But I'm very excited to try out Samurott. We even have like Quillfish as a very good SD Samurott check. So we'll probably see a decent amount of still special Rot too. Maybe some mixed thrown in there. But it's a mon that I'm excited to use. Samurott could be like legitimately one of our best options for this month, and I'm happy for that. Then we got the returners. So Floatzel, last time it was in you, it didn't really see a lot of use because it was mostly just getting spammed on, not even spammed, just used on rain teams. And those have never been super ever-present in Inu, at least not this generation. But now, no Vaporeon means Wave Crash is easier to spam. You only have to worry about Croak as an immunity. And while Quillfish and, like, you know, Appleton, Lurantis, Cacturn, I should mention Cacturn as an immunity too, I guess. You know, you got some of these other mods, they're just not as bulky. Outside of, like, Quillfish, which isn't immune to Wave Crash. So you could at least still hit it with the move. I think Floatzel could have at least a little bit better of a time, even on, like, outside of rain. I could see Floatzel being a bit more competent now than it was back then, because, yeah, you know, a mon that definitely you needed to Terra to ever get by it in Vaporeon just isn't around now. So maybe keep it on Floatzel. It's also very fast. 361, I believe, speed, so it speed ties with a Hisuian Sneasel. That does put it above Tauros, which is also pretty good. So, I think it could be pretty decent now. It could also just be worse than Samurott, though, so who knows. And then probably the most contentious drop is Zoroark coming back down to Inu. Now, y'all will remember, I believe Zoroark rose in the July tier shifts, actually. It hasn't been gone very long. And at the end of Zoroark's stay in Inu, you got a lot of people wanting it banned. Actually, I think it rose in June, but, you know, it hasn't been gone too long. But you had a lot of people wanting Zoroark banned, because by the end of its stay, you had a lot of set versatility popping up that, like, increasingly made it more and more difficult to play around. And in a lower power level generation, especially defensively, the illusion mind games actually do become much more profound, because misplays are punished so much more when the Pokemon you're switching into are, you know, frailer. You know, that shouldn't come as a surprise. You know, you have... If I'm mid-grounding a Copperajah on a Zoroark Dark Pulse, like an Assault Vest Copperajah, that's a lot different from mid-grounding an Assault Vest Berserker, is what I'm getting at, you know? Your misplays get punished more because the mon is going to be doing more damage, really. And then, of course, the set that got the most use at the end, or the two sets, I'll say, Specs, and then, like, the knockoff Black Glasses set, both of those were just extremely effective. Where knockoff with Black Glasses was able to cripple potential checks like Bombardier and Chansey, and in Specs was just, you know, it's pressing Dark Pulse, and it's getting its damage. I do think Zoroark could be maybe contained better now. We, of course, have Blissey. Blissey is walling any Zoroark set other than SD till, you know, time stops. And Hisuian Quillfish is also another very, very good Zoroark answer. Neither of them are perfect. They get U-turned on. But, you know, Quillfish could easily have Poison Point if it wants to adapt a little bit, just to have that extra room for punishing. Blissey is still immensely bulky, so it's not like you're beating it down. You know, you can always go for knockoff, but Blissey can always Terra Fairy. And I don't think your Sludge Bomb is consistently beating through it. You still have Bombardier seeing, you know, exponential usage. Umbreon could always tick back up a little bit if it needed to, although I'm not a huge Umbreon fan regardless right now, so probably not. And maybe contrast the meta from back then. I feel like especially defensive Dunsparce is more prevalent now than it was at the start of NUPL. It was about that time we saw Zoroark leave. So that is at least another mon that could dissuade Zoroark from, you know, coming out and just deciding, I Dark Pulse spam now, have fun. I do believe this is a mon that the council will vote on at least. You know, listen to community input for a little bit, see how people are feeling about Zoroark's drop, and then go from there. Because we don't want to act too rashly, especially since we have literally this month and then the tiers completely changed. The problem, of course, is if you want to say, oh, well, why bother tiering anything? Well, thank you for asking that question. The reason is because we still have ongoing tournaments. And so you want to make sure tournaments are in the best possible state they can be and that you don't allow super toxic elements to stick around for too long. So yeah, now we can talk about the two mons that rose to NU. Of course, Articuno, y'all know, I mean, we went over the VR video, it's like A+ on the VR. Just a very, very good Pokemon. It's nice to have these bulky pivots that are still pretty fast, and with how much bulky setup spam NU has, this mon having Pressure plus Haze gives it an advantageous matchup against just so much. I mean, you want to talk about a mon that came out of nowhere. It's Articuno. This thing has been the definition of consistent in shutting down Pokemon like even Bulk Up Grim, but also Coil Sandaconda, Coil to Dunsparce can be given a bit of a headache. Although you really want Terra Ghost, I would say, for that, because Body Slam can always para you anyway. Something even like Coil Eel doesn't necessarily love Articuno once it goes for its Terra. And in Tauros, Tauros is still a really good Pokemon. I'm not the biggest fan, but, you know, at the end of the day, you talk about consistent defensive, like, counters. I wouldn't say there's any counter to Tauros. You've got good defensive measures in, like, Tauros, Intimidate Quillfish, even Rotom, Drifblim, Sableye. But Tauros has ways around all of them. It's still also so fast that you always have to be respecting it in the, like, mid and end game of a battle. Because, yeah, it could have done nothing the whole game, but if they kept their Tauros at full, mon's pretty bulky. It's still really strong, it's still really fast, so it could easily look for a late game cleanup. So, definitely deserves to be around NU. We'll see if it picks up more usage this month. And in what we dropped to PU, again, this is always the bit of the speed round. Also, quick note, look at like 1, 2, 3, and then consider they banned Lilligant, and now they get like 3 Lilligant checks. That's really funny. But Chansey drops, I mentioned why it would. Blissey is around now. There's just no reason to run Chansey. Haunter dropping, I think, has a lot to do with Hisui and Quillfish being so common, and Haunter definitely is going to struggle in that matchup 10,000% of the time. Yes, you could trick it, and you could give it a Scarf, and even steal its a Violite, which is a really good exchange. But, you know, otherwise, if you don't get that trick off, it's pretty bad. And Blissey is also very common, and very commonly is running Shadow Ball, so it's just not as friendly a metagame now to Haunter. There's just more common Pokemon that stifle its ability to make progress. Thank God Cloth dropped. I was tired of seeing this mon in the builder. Cloth actually is going to be so welcomed by PU. I think they're going to love this drop, because it gives them a knockoff Regenerator Stealth Rock Center. That is insane to have in one mod. But it's always kind of failed to have a really solid niche in you. Sandaconda has always defined the Stealth Rock metagame. And at the beginning of NU, you had Copper Raja. And then when Raja left, you had Chansey, frankly. And at the end of the day, most teams would always just default to Conda. Maybe they'd even run no Stealth Rock and just run, like, Spikes if they wanted hazards, so. Cloth never managed to find much of a niche. Now it drops to a tier where it should have one. Sliggoo, Hisui drops right back down to PU. I will say this once again, I'm convinced this is all because of the 2 videos that Aim and I did. This mod should not have ever risen to NU, but we gaslit everyone into thinking it was better than it actually is. And I want to say gaslit, because it actually was pretty good. It was just not... That phase of being pretty good did not last much longer than a week or 2. But hey, I enjoyed using this mod when it was here. Maybe I'll use it in PU some, because it should be good down there. Spiritomb drops as well. That seems like a good mod, for PU standards at least. Crotomb stuff's always good. It's not really had a niche ever since the first week or 2 of NU. And with Sableye around and being widely considered to be just superior, for general utility purposes, of course Spiritomb does the bulky setup stuff much better. A lot of times teams just want that Knockmon, they want the fast Willow, they want the fast Recover even. Encore is so huge, because the difference between Sableye and Spiritomb, I think the best way to put it is compare them in a matchup against Bulk Up Ursaring. Sableye can win that matchup, because I can Encore the Ursaring into bulk up. What's Spiritomb doing once that Ursaring goes for Terra Fairy? Not much. That's the best way I could put it. And in Weirdeer, this mon has not seen success in Inu, and as a result, it drops to PU. Just about any set it can do is outclassed. The Assault Vest set's like okay, but even then, it's just kind of awkward to put on teams. And you know, why use Weirdeer when I kind of a Chansey, or not a Chansey, a Blissey, or you know, a Dunsparce or Ursaring. Just there's too much competition for the poor deer. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Hope y'all enjoyed. Of course, here's stuff. Also, look, this is what I said should be S rank in my last video. And look what's up here. Also, look at Grimmsnarl. Look at this usage. It's been banned for like 2 weeks. Or a week and a half. Yeah. Even Hoopa. Even Hoopa's way up here. But I hope y'all enjoyed this, of course, like I said at the beginning. If you did, leave a like. Comment down below what your... comment down below what your favorite Pokemon is that dropped. Like, what are you most excited to use out of these new 6? My answer's Cryogonal, so I'd like to hear from y'all. And I'll catch y'all in the next video. Peace.